Hi, my name is Trent Short, and I will be talking to you guys today about the complexity of throwing, particularly in baseball. So a little bit of overview of what we're going to go over in this presentation is we're going to go over the purpose of the motion of throwing, the phases of the movements, the classification, and whether it is simultaneous or sequential or both, the joints and muscular systems that are involved within the throwing motion. Also the injuries, and the biggest one that comes along with it is Tommy John. And lastly, we're going to wrap it up with a conclusion. So first is the purpose behind throwing. So when a lot of people think about baseball, they think about, oh, this game's stupid, or this game's too slow, and it's just a bunch of guys throwing and hitting a baseball, when in reality, these pitchers are standing 60 feet 6 inches away, delivering pitches at probably an average around 93 to 95 miles an hour. And the purpose behind all this is to use elements of velocity, accuracy, and power to throw into the specific strike zone, which stands from about a little box about at someone's knees, or at the batter's knees, going up to probably the beginning of their chest. So some of the functions that throwing serves is the warm-up. So a lot of times you'll see guys warming up on the sidelines before games, or on the foul line before games, or in between innings, the pitcher warming up while the infielders are getting ground balls from the first baseman, or the outfielders are playing long toss in between innings as well. Another function that throwing serves is to record an out, obviously, when either an outfielder has a put out from the outfield throwing a runner out trying to advance, or an infielder or pitcher throwing out one of the runners on the infield. And next would be the pitching motion, which includes the overhand throw. And then lastly, something that is highly overlooked is practice. So as you can see on this next slide, there's 5 different phases throughout the entire throwing motion, and starting with the wind-up, and then moving into the cocking phase, and then moving into acceleration, and then going into deceleration, and then a follow-through motion. So phase 1 is known as the wind-up. As you can see, Madison Bumgarner here has his front leg lifted into air to incorporate the start of what is known as the power generation, where he stores majority of his power on the heel of his foot that is planted on the ground. This particular phase is only seen with the actions of a pitcher, because the throw itself takes way longer to do, as if someone was, if a shortstop, for example, were out there fielding and they ended up doing the wind-up phase. It would just take way too much time. There should be a single leg stance with the pitcher's weight slightly shifted backward, and that weight that is shifted backward will be able to be transferred forward throughout the entire motion as it progresses. Next is the cocking phase, demonstrated by Noah Syndergaard here. His hands, as you can see, are separated from the glove to initiate the arm's initial action. It's in a good cocked position with his scaps pinched and arm up, and the shoulder must rotate externally. The shoulder is rotated externally while the stride leg is about to plant down and have both hip and knee extension while internally rotating. And the arm and body begin to transfer all of that stored energy transfer all that stored energy into the acceleration phase. So in the acceleration phase, the arm is finally beginning to move forward, and you can see in this picture with Max Scherzer, obviously this is one of the many reasons the pitchers deal with a lot of arm injuries. So this is the point where all the power and energy that is stored in the all that energy is transferred into the ball at this point, because the arm is moving from an externally rotated position and it begins to head into an internally rotated position near the humeral head. And this allows for more force to be used against the ball since the weight was cocked back and moving forward now. Phase number 4 is the deceleration phase. So a common phrase within the pitching motion from a lot of different coaches, you'll hear a lot of them say, you have to accelerate or decelerate. You got to accelerate and then decelerate. So this occurs when the ball is released from the pitcher's hand. After the pitcher releases the ball, the arm will then decrease its speed. And at this point, this is where a majority of the pitchers see a lot of injuries, because the arm continuously rotates forward, and at that same time that the arm's natural motion is going to want to decelerate. So it causes a lot of unwanted stress on your arm. And finally, the last phase of the throwing motion is considered to be the follow-through. And this is where the pitcher has all the weight transferred from the back leg and from his back leg, and now is transferred onto his front leg. And at this point, the pitch has been delivered, so there should be no more energy or any kind of force coming from the back leg at this point anymore. Everything should be left out there. So this allows for the pitcher to have more control of his body, which will allow him to have more accuracy, because if a pitcher can control his body and not have inconsistency with his motion, he'll have more fluid motion and a lot more accuracy. This allows the pitcher to be more explosive as well, because he's staying back in a controlled acceleration and deceleration phase. And the arm should be attempting to let the rest of the body catch up to allow the pitcher to finish in a fielding position. And a good fielding position for a pitcher would be with that back leg planted and then his chest facing towards the batter with his knees slightly flexed. Next is the classification. So the act of throwing a baseball itself is open chain movement, where the pitching arm rotates extremely quickly around the glenohumeral joint and the ball is released. So the phase of the throw is what determines what type of movement it is performing, honestly. And a good example of this is when the pitcher is in the windup or cocking phase. He's performing a closed chain movement with his lower half. And during both these phases, the pitcher permits his weight from his back to provide proper balance on his leg during the stride portion during the cocking phase. Next is if it is either simultaneous or sequential or both. The throwing motion is obviously very fast and happens within seconds. So this allows children to start out performing these movements in a more simultaneous way, using only their shoulder to throw. So it's considered sequential because it does occur in phases, but the action can also be considered simultaneous as it happens so fast. So the joints within this, so the motion of the baseball throw is considered to be in the transverse plane, and the shoulder is considered to be a ball and socket joint, and which is obviously evident in this throwing motion. And the elbow is considered to be a hinge joint that is formed by the humerus and ulna. A common throw will always require pronation of the forearm, but there are two types that require excessive pronation and sometimes supination. And these pitches are known as the changeup and curveball because they require you to flick your wrist and move your fingers in a specific pronation, supination type motion. Also, you will see the hip and knee joints come into play as they are both flexed and extended throughout the entire motion. So some of the muscles that make up the entire throwing motion would be the anterior deltoid, the pectoralis major, the serratus anterior, the biceps brachii, the brachialis, teres minor, and the trunk extensors. Moving on, now we have the injuries that are seen commonly within the throwing motion. So the reason this a lot of injuries occur because there's a lot of muscular structures that are involved within this throwing motion. So some of the common things that you can keep an eye out for or keep a feel out for is if there's a lot of reoccurring pain or inflammation in a pitcher's elbow or shoulder. Another reason a lot of injuries occur within this motion is because it's considered to be an unnatural process. So a lot of injuries are located within the shoulders, particularly the rotator cuff, because of this unnatural motion. One of the most common injuries of this shoulder is a slap tear. In a slap injury, the top part of the labrum is injured, and this top of the area is also where the long head of the biceps tendon attaches to the labrum. A slap tear also occurs within the front and the back attachment of this point. One of the most common injuries is definitely Tommy John surgery, or Tommy John, which often results in surgery. And sadly, there's a lot of younger clientele within this surgery lately, and that was best described in one of the articles. And I'm going to read one of the quotes, and he said, "Tommy John surgery has saved the careers of countless professional pitchers over the past 3 decades, whose elbow injuries otherwise would have left them on the scrap heap. But the problem it is meant to solve has only become more common. One study showed that from 2007 through 2011, about 56.8% of all ulnar collateral ligament replacement surgeries were performed on 15 to 19-year-olds. Some sport medicine experts predict that the figure will be closer to 2/3 over the next 5 years." So that's a big common that's a big common issue within the world of baseball today, as a lot of pitchers are starting to pitch at a younger age. This surgery was brought about by a man named Frank Jobe in 1974, who actually performed the ulnar collateral ligament surgery on somebody named Tommy John, which obviously gave him the name. And what you're doing within this surgery is you're basically taking a healthy ligament from another part of your body, such as your thigh or wrist, or sometimes some people even get these ligaments from a dead person, and you're putting it in place of the torn ligament. And within this surgery, you're looking at about a 14 to 18 month recovery time. And that was it. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys could have a lot of possible takeaways from this, and thank you for watching.